At the big table right now is Rip Rapson. He is the president and CEO of the Kresge Foundation. Rip, thanks so much for being here with us.
Pleasure.
We appreciate it. It's getting a little boisterous back here, huh?
It always does. Usually it takes a little longer than this to heat up, but not this time.
You know, have you then felt a different vibe about the conference this year? Do you believe that there's been an increased enthusiasm?
I think there is, in this impossible time, a real sense of optimism. I don't know quite where that always comes from, but I think a combination of a governor with high energy, a private sector that seems to have sort of gotten its feet back on the ground, and a public sector that's really doing its best to try to stabilize and revitalize basic functions. I think it all makes for a reasonably good story.
A very good story, and an interesting one too when you involve foundations like the Kresge Foundation, and you have been involved with several different projects in the city of Detroit. Have you seen that more foundations and then business leaders are coming in to try to do more things to make the city more viable?
Well, I think they have to. I think it's becoming clear that the city alone simply can't take on a challenge of this magnitude, whether it's abandoned housing or long-term economic revitalization or utilization of underutilized land. I mean, you've got to have the Dan Gilberts and the Roger Penske's and the Ford Foundations and the Kresge Foundations and neighborhood organizations all in it together. Unless you sort of get that sense of collective energy, it's going to be really tough.
Why can't they handle it? Is it because there's some kind of institutional, just because of the way things have been done or mismanaged, or is there too much disagreement? All of the above, some of the above, A and C only?
It's what's in the law business called a leading question. I think it's all of the above. Clearly, we've not managed our affairs the way we need to, but you've got to give Mayor Bing credit. I mean, over the last 2 or 3 years, he's really introduced a sense of ethical behavior and clear priorities.
Which I think has been refreshing and helpful.
Oh, completely. But I also think that these are the kinds of challenges no American city has ever faced. I've worked for the better part of 25 years in cities across America, and there is nothing even remotely comparable to what Detroit is going through. And so when you have that level of implosion, the flight of markets into the suburbs, the foreclosure crisis, the credit crunch, I mean, all of those things are like a tsunami, and I'm not sure it's reasonable for one entity in and of itself to be able to shoulder the full burden. It's got to be a shared civic responsibility.
So there has been a lot of collaboration, and one thing I want to mention is the M1 Light Rail project. There has been tremendous collaboration from the business and the nonprofit to try to get that project up off the ground. Tell me where it stands right now. You're waiting to hear from the Department of Transportation.
We're going to have a visit from the Secretary of Transportation in a week or two. We were trying to schedule it last week, but schedules didn't permit. I hope that when he comes, he's going to announce that the light rail will move forward. This is a fascinating story. Essentially, and it's maybe a good example of what we were just talking about. The governor, the mayor, and the Secretary of Transportation a couple of months ago decided that they would not do the light rail project. It was too hard, wasn't enough money. They wanted to nest it into this regional bus rapid transit piece. But I think with people like Dan Gilbert and Roger Penske and Kresge Foundation and others saying, no, give us 30 or 90 days to sort of basically prove the case. We'll be able to show you that we can fund it, we can operate it, and we can pass it off to a public entity. So I think we'll succeed.
And you've managed to raise to the tune of what, $130 million?
Yeah, one of the difficulties that the Secretary of Transportation pointed out is that we had committed about $100 million, but with cost increases because of inflation and a larger contingency that they wanted, they asked us to raise essentially another $30 or $40 million. We raised that in 3 months.
What do you want to see happen in this region in the next year? So you can get your crystal ball out. So when we talk next year at this time.
3 things.
Okay.
I think we need to make sure that the rail is in the ground, being built, and ready to board in 2014, 2015. Second, we've got to sustain the energy coming out of the Midtown area. I mean, one of, I think, the great misconceptions is that this is really a tale of 2 cities in Detroit, with Midtown and downtown being vibrant and healthy and growing, and the neighborhoods sort of falling behind. Although there's some truth to that, you have to start somewhere, and if we can start in Midtown and build out concentric circles to increasingly touch other neighborhoods, I think that'll be a huge success. And third, I think we'll have in place a year from now a comprehensive reimagination of how to manage Detroit's land, particularly its vacant land. There'll be a major set of reports coming out in August that sort of detail how that might be done, and I suspect that the mayor and the city council will welcome that.
And we'll can't wait to see the next move.
Yeah.
Rip Rapson, thanks so much for joining me, CEO of the Kresge Foundation. We appreciate all your work.
Thank you for your time.
All right, have a good night.
Thanks.
All right, as we continue.